Hi, someone asked about running the load off a single solar panel. Now, all I have is my 15 amp charger controller. I do have my battery pack hooked up here. Now, I want you to hear something. Now, you can see the MP3 player is charging off of the 120 watt. Now remember, this is a 120 watt power inverter, but you can see it's not turning green. There's a reason behind that. Using a single solar panel, if you're going to run a load off a single panel, you have to understand the power usage and the limitations of a single panel. A single panel only puts out 5.55 amps on your average amperage. Now, on the optimal perfect day where the panels are cool, it's super bright and sunny, and there are clouds everywhere right now, so it of course is not getting full sun. But what can you run off your load? Alright, you can charge things. Now, the reason I would not use a single panel for this is because it's not enough amps. It's really not, and it may put out 18 volts one panel for maximum, but there's no way running something major off your load. See, let me unplug this. You can see that's still charging. Now the light's not on, but I don't have any inverter smaller. Now let's unplug this. Yeah. I apologize, I'm having to use my left hand. Now you just heard it kick off, right? That's because it's not trying to pull too much power through the charger controller. Now here's one of my old chargers. Now you can run lights and things like that off of a single panel. One panel will run my 12 volt submersible water pump. I need to turn this. Now, if I wired it straight up to my water pump, would it power my 12 volt submersible? Yes. But it would have to be perfect outside. I mean, literally, the sun would have to be shining and everything else, and it's just not worth it. If you're going to get solar panels and you're wanting to run off your load, the thing you have to understand is your charger controller is rated for a certain amperage. It goes up to that amp. Right there. Alright, this one is a 15 amp. That means it can handle up to 15 amps input. So basically, I can put 2 solar panels on this charger controller. Any more than that is a no-no. And you can see it's charging just fine. I do have it hooked up to my battery pack because the battery I was going to use, my small battery, is down to 4 volts. So it would have taken all day for that to try to charge off of a single solar panel and then be able to use the load. Now, I brought my fan out here. I was going to test it, but I already knew that I figured this would not work very well on 120 watt DC inverter. One, it may be 12 volt, but it still needs certain amperage and certain power to go through this. See, input 13.8 volts DC at 12 amps. Okay, that's what it says. Now this will run on less than 12 amps. This will basically run on 10 amps. If I plug that into my 30 amp charger controller, which you can use 1/3 on that charger controller through the load, it only pushes 10 amps. So another reason this is not going to work is because of what it pulls. 13.8 volts. Now on a bright sunny day, we have 18 volts maximum. So that's covered. But it requires a certain number of amps to go through this inverter. Alright. So if you're going to use a charger controller to power external things like lights, charging, you can see the charging is perfect. It works just fine. Low power DC lighting, things along those lines. Unless you have the panels to go with that charger controller. Now, if I hooked up 2 panels instead of just one, I have it unhooked from here. I don't know if you can see that. Right there. The question was, what can I do with the load off of, I guess, 1 panel? They weren't specific. If you're buying a 100 watt panel, you can run 12 volt lights. You can charge things as long as they're under a certain amperage. Now remember, this may put out 5 amps possibly through the load. It's a 15 amp charger controller, so it can put out 5 amps through the load, 1/3. Now if you get one of those cheap eBay charger controllers that cost $20 for a 100 amp charger controller, those are dangerous if you try to overload them. You cannot run 100 amps on one of those things. It's ridiculous. It's just stupid. They are basically the size of this, the charger controller right here, which is a 15 amp. If you buy one of those off eBay, yeah, you can get the higher one. Apparently they only have like 2 extra MOSFETs in it, or something like that, compared to the really cheap, super cheap ones. And the ones that say 100 amp, I would put no more than 20 amps through that. 30 maybe. I really wouldn't trust one that, even 100 amp for 20-25 bucks, I'd run no more than 30 amps literally ever through that thing, and I'd be worried about 30 amps. 15 to 20 amps on one of those is the best you should do. Be on the safe side on those, because they are not built very well. And you can see it's still charging. I hope you can see that. I apologize. I'm outside and trying to look through this little screen is not easy. So, could you run this inverter with 2 solar panels? Yes. But I would advise no less than 3 for even an inverter this size. You want to make sure you have the amps and the volt to be able to power this inverter. So, you wanted to see something on load. Sorry about the plane. But you didn't specify how many panels, the wattage of the panels, and anything else. So basically, I unhooked 1 panel, got the weakest charger controller that I have, which is a 15 amp, and hooked it up. Now remember, your charger controller may say 15, 20, 30 amps on it. I hope you can see that, because I can't see squat. 12 volt, 15 amp, it may say 20 amp, it may say 30 amp, it may say 40, 60, 80 amp. My other charger controller is a 30 amp. And if I hooked up a 30 amp charger controller to a single solar panel, it would work to a point. It would not pull 30 amps. It would not be able to kick 30 amps. It takes in 5.55 amps. And that's on a perfect day, and today's not a perfect day. So, if you're going to run stuff off your load, make sure you have enough panels to get enough power through your charger controller. Let's say, once again, let's say I wanted to run this 120 watts at 13 amps, whatever it said. Now this will run off 12 amps. Like I said, it will run off of my other my 30 amp charger controller. It'll run the fan here. It will run the power of the laptop. It'll run all kinds of things. So, and that's with just the load. Okay, let's go back over here and let's plug this in so I can show you once again. Okay, sorry about that. You can see it's plugged in here. Now this is on 300 watts of solar, no longer 400. The green light is on. The fan is plugged in. Now, the reason you hear a hum, this is a modified sine wave inverter. Now this is directly off the load off a 30 amp. And remember, if you buy a 30 amp off eBay or Amazon and it's 20 bucks, don't do this. No problems here. So don't do that if you buy a 30 amp off eBay, Amazon, even a small charger controller like this. It's only a 15 amp, and even if I had, if I had more solar hooked up to it, I would not hook up 3 to this, no more than 2 on a 15 amp, because they are 5.5 amps, and this can only handle up to 15 amps. So that would be 11.2 amps, I believe. That would actually power that DC-AC inverter if I had 2 solar panels. So if you're going to buy solar panels and you want to be able to run some things off the load, get at least 3 to 4 panels, because it's not just your solar charger controller you have to watch out for when powering things. I mean, that's still charging. Geez, I can't see that. It's not just the charger controller. It is actually the amount of power your solar can kick out. 5.55 amps. I hope you can see that, because I can't see jack. So, remember, it has to do with your panels, how much power is sending through the charger controller before you can power something out of the charger controller. Now, these charger controllers, I just turn the battery off, right here, off. Now that charger controller is still going, and it is still charging. So this charger controller here is actually putting power straight from the solar panel, not into the battery. Of course, it wouldn't put power into this battery anyway. This is only out. It is a jump starter. There you go. Negative off. And it is still charging this. That shows you can, off certain charger controllers, once they go, then you can power certain things just straight off the charger controller. So, some cases you will need a battery, and some you won't. I have not tried my other one, because I really don't want to hook the battery off that one. But I have not tried the other one to see if it'll work like this one. But then again, every charger controller is different. And it is still charging. Now, if I plugged a light directly in here, which I don't have any lights with any type of fixtures or anything on them that I could check on here, it would possibly do a light, 12 volt light, without an issue. But once again, they asked a question about the load off a charger controller, and I believe they wanted to know on one panel, but they didn't say what size panel. So there is one panel. It is unhooked from the other ones. It is not hooked up to a battery. You can see one of the wires is hanging. Let's unhook this one. There we go. No wires. And it is still charging. Now, charging something is much better than running direct, because running it direct has to constantly pull power. And if your panel, if clouds show up and your panel is dim, that can affect whatever you're trying to. DC lights, if you're going to charge something, that's fine, because if the power goes out on it, it goes behind sun goes behind a cloud. It's not going to hurt you if you're charging something like a laptop or whatever. Let's see. I don't know if you can see this. It's jumping off and on right now. See that? That's because, wow, clouds are everywhere. Alright, I'm fixing to go. You asked about running off a load. You didn't say what size panels you wanted to get. You didn't say what you were wanting to run. I know one person asked if they could run a fridge off the load. That would depend. The pure simple answer is absolutely yes, depending on the size of your batteries, not batteries, but your solar charger controller, and how many panels you have. Okay? It depends on that. Because remember, your panels are powering your load. Plain and simple. So if a cloud pops up and blocks the sun, you just lost power. See, the sun's starting to come out again a little bit more. There you go. You can see it just trying to charge, kick off and on while charging. Okay. If you want to run something like a fridge off a load, you have to have a very powerful charger controller. I would say at least a 30 amp charger controller. And I'm talking about a mini fridge now. I'm not talking about a full-size fridge. I would say at least a 30 amp charger controller. You know what? I should have hooked something up. Oh crap, this thing restarted on me. Oh hell, I hate this camera. But since it restarted, I might as well keep going. Let me see what it will do. I have to unhook this. I have to turn this off and splice this together anyway, so give me a minute here. Once again, off this 30 amp charger controller, everything's working fine. Let me run in there and hook up my fridge on an extension cord. Alright, this is on 120 watt here. Would I go higher if I was doing this? Absolutely. It is only on a 10 amp fuse. I should have turned more lights on in here. You can tell when I make videos, I make a huge mess. Okay. The fridge is working. We got cookies in the fridge. Okay. Here. Swallow. Yeah. It's unhooked. Nothing. Get in there. Alright, it's plugged in. There. Let's get this compressor to kick. Now this is going to pull a lot of power through there. If you're going to run a mini fridge, do not run it off a small modified sine wave inverter like this. Go bigger, stronger. Alright, so that is through the 30 amp charger controller load. This is to show you the difference between a small 15 amp and something a little bit larger, okay? Now, would I use this 120 watt to run a fridge full time? Absolutely not. I would go no less than, I don't know, 1100, at least 1000 watt. You want to make sure it doesn't overheat. Now remember, these mini fridges don't pull a lot of amps, but they can pull some volts. So, but apparently it works off of the charger controller, because somebody did say something about that. Go higher with your charger controller, if you can, your solar panels. If you're going to run something large off your load, remember, as soon as the sun goes behind the cloud, it's shot, it's gone. There will be no power. Now let me show you. I did hook up my last panel. Everything here is unhooked. I hope you can see that. I can't see squat out here through this camera. And there's my battery pack. So right now this is powering this through the load. And then it is powering the mini fridge. Now you can see a little bit of light blinking in there. That's because, one, that inverter is not strong enough to really power this like it should. It will power it, but two, it's also a modified sine wave inverter. If you're going to use a modified sine wave inverter, make sure you go a little bit higher than what you think you need. I did make something up here that I was going to talk about, but I believe I've already done that. So, can you run a fridge off of solar? Yes. Can you run it off the load? Yes. Because right now I'm getting, let's see, even if I'm only getting 4 amps through each panel, that's 16 amps that I'm getting from all 4 panels. So let's say I'm getting 3 amps. Alright, that's what? 3 times 4, 12. So that's 12 amps I'm getting. Even with the sun not being out very much, or very well. I thought I saw midnight out there. If you're going to run appliances or anything else, figure your amperage that you want to run off the load. So say I want to say 10 amps. Alright, say you want to be able to run 10 amps off your load. Times that by 3. Literally. And that's the size of solar charger controller you need. Then figure, okay, that's a 30 amp. Now each one of these solar panels kicks out 5.5 amps. So that's 11 amps for 2. That's 22 amps for 4. So I could probably actually add another one on there if I wanted to, but you buy these in kits. If you're smart, you'll buy them in kits. Would that run a fridge off the load? If your fridge pulled less than 11 amps, 11, 12 amps, then yeah, without an issue. And remember, your charger controller load is basically for extra dumping of the power, and for you to add extra things too, like lights, chargers, things like that. Now the reason that other one wouldn't do this is because one panel is not enough to even power this little bitty 120 watt modified sine wave inverter. And right here I have a 10 amp fuse and it's not blown. So that little mini fridge is pulling less than 10 amps. Which a 30 amp charger controller, at least a good one, not that junk you buy off eBay or Amazon that's 20 bucks, but a decent 30 amp charger controller, they cost, $60, $70, $80, $90 just for a 30 amp that would be able to handle something like this. Alright, I do believe it went off. It did. Alright, you can hear it now. This was not nearly big enough to pull that. See that? Now if I hooked up a larger inverter, then it would work much, much better. I have already shown you me hooking up my 1100 watt inverter through a 15 amp fuse on this. If you go through my videos, that's what I would go with. Nothing less than 1000 watt to power a mini fridge like this off of a load. And that's what I would do. These little cheap Everstar power inverters are all crap. Do not buy one of them. They're junk. They're Walmart shit. They don't work well. And you can say, you know, it did run for a little bit. Boom. As soon as that compressor kicked on, bam, it shut it down. Because these compressors have a high surge just for a split second. And that's all it took to overload that. Now I could have hooked up a 400 watt, but it would have done the same thing. Make no mistake, it would have done the same thing. So, and actually replacing the fuses in that 400 watt is really expensive. It takes some of the round fuses. So yeah, I'm not going to do that. At least 1000 watt inverter running off your load if you're going to run an appliance like a refrigerator or a chest freezer. They may not pull a whole bunch of amps, but when that compressor kicks on, it's a huge power surge. Alright, this video is super long. Anyway, for the person that asked, can I run a fridge, a mini fridge, off of solar, off the load? Absolutely. It has to do with the size of your charger controller, how many panels you have feeding in your charger controller, and the size of your inverter. Okay? If you don't have enough amperage coming from your solar panels to your charger controller, it will absolutely not work. If your charger controller is not big enough, it will absolutely not work. For the person that asked about what they can run off a smaller charger controller load, that depends on, once again, how many solar panels you have, the size of your charger controller. And remember, you could have a 100 amp charger controller, but if your solar panel's only putting out 5.5 amps on a perfect day or a good day, you're not going to be able to run much. So it's kind of a trick question. What I would do is, if you're wanting to run something decent off the load, decent, not the whole house, but decent, get no less than a 400 watt set or a kit with a 30 amp charger controller. And if you're going to use a power inverter, make sure you have at least 1,000 watts. Now remember, whatever you're using cannot exceed the number of panels you have, the power coming in for your panels. 400 watts, subtract 20% automatically for loss through the cables, through the inverter, whatever, through the wires, of course. Alright, so figure, I'm just doing this in my head. If it runs more than 360 watts, give or take-ish, your panels are not going to keep up with that unless they're in direct sunlight all the time. Anyway, this video is super long, and I have to splice two together, it looks like. Once again, to the person that asked about running stuff off a smaller charger controller, the lowest charger controller I have is a 15 amp. You did not specify how many, which means you would have a 10 amp charger controller. You could pull no more than 5.5 amps into that charger controller if you have one solar panel, 100 watt. And so basically, out of your load, you're looking at maybe an amp and a half, give or take ish. So if it's under an amp and a half, as long as the sun is out and you're running off your load, if you're just charging stuff like that, the MP3 player, running a small 12 volt DC light, running a small 12 volt DC fan, even charging a laptop, if you have a power adapter that plugs into a cigarette lighter, that possibly may work for you off one solar panel. If it draws anything above 2 amps, I'd forget it on one solar panel and a small charger controller. So anyway, that's it. I'm fixing to go. I have to splice these two damn videos together because I know this thing should. It looks like 3 videos together. Looks like it shut off and started again. So this one's going to be a long one, people. And since this is less than a minute since it started again, I need to get more footage in here. I apologize, because splicing a minute of video on other video just doesn't work well. Once again, I apologize. If I'm shaking too much, I apologize. Like I said, you saw the fan running off the 30 amp charger controller without an issue. None. It powered the mini fridge without an issue. It has a 10 amp fuse on it without an issue, and that's straight off the load. Yeah, birds. Hello, little spider. Yeah, a little spider there too, and one over there. So if you're going to try to run certain things, the more solar panels, the better. If you're going to run something large and heavy, always run it off your batteries and not off the load. If you're running stuff off the load that it doesn't matter if it's on constantly, then that's fine. But remember, if the sun goes behind a cloud, you just lost power. At night, you have no power through any of this other than from your batteries. Like I said, I ordered 400 more watts of solar, one more solar kit. It was $428.51. The price went up $20 in 2 months, literally 2 months. And it should be here this weekend. Today's Friday. FedEx said this weekend. I did just get in my Dicor. I worked on the trailer, the roof of the trailer yesterday. Went ahead, put Dicor around the patches I made and over the screws. I replaced the one screws that were sticking through the roof. So, and the sad thing is, FedEx, I have to watch them, especially this weekend, since they're bringing these panels, hopefully this weekend, that's what they're saying. They left my damn package of Dicor right under the sign that says, "Do not leave here. Take to the back." They left the shit, I mean, literally right under the damn sign again. This is starting to piss me off at FedEx. If my panels get here and I don't get to them in time, if they leave them around the front and somebody steals them, I will be so pissed off. We've had so much stuff stole from us because of FedEx leaving the crap at the wrong door. And I've called this numerous times, and they just don't give a damn. Don't ever use FedEx. Whatever you do, people. FedEx sucks. Don't ever use them. If you sell something on eBay or Amazon, and you want to make sure that it gets to the person that bought it, never use FedEx. They suck. Anyway. I guess that's it. I have to splice the videos together. Once again, you did see the fridge running off of the load. The load's not what went out. The inverter actually kicked because it was drawing too much power through the inverter. So my advice to the people who wonder, can I run a fridge off load? Yes. Mini fridge? Absolutely. With a large enough inverter. But my advice to you is do not run it off the load. Little petty things, a laptop that only pulls so many watts and amps, charging your cell phone, 12 volt DC lights that don't pull a lot of power, stuff like that off your load is fine. But do not hook something up to your load that you need power to all the time, or that can pull an extreme amount of power. I mean, I wouldn't be stupid enough to hook my microwave up to a load on a charger controller unless that charger controller was a 100 amp charger controller or higher, and I had, I don't know, $30,000 in solar panels. Then you could. I mean, you could run half your house on that, even off the load, because it'd be like, I don't know, 30 amps. 33 amps through the load setting or load cables or whatever you want to call it off your charger controller. And if you had enough solar panels that would put that in there, you could run that without an issue. But most people that watch my videos, they want to go budget friendly. So yes, you can run a fridge off the load. As far as a small single 100 watt solar panel off the load, you're not going to power much because it only puts out 5.5 amps on the best of days. I mean, if it's in perfect optimal condition where the solar panels are cold, they're clean, they're brand new, perfect weather, perfect sun, directly over it, you can get 9 amps. They can spike. That's why they size solar panels and charger controllers to where at the highest peak that the panel says it's rated for, it can cover that. Now, I've never seen a solar panel, 100 watt, kick 9 amps, but apparently they can. Some people have talked about it. Now, I myself have never seen that, but I'm going by what other people have said. Now, I figure 7 amps, that's why it would be okay to carry 4 of these on a 30 amp charging controller. So, you know, that'd be what, 28 amps at 7 amps each. So yeah, a 30 amp charging controller could, carry that, and you still have a little wiggle room. All right, I'm fixing to go. Little spiders. Yeah, we got spiders coming in the house all day now. I'm fixing to go. I have to splice all these damn videos together. I think there's 3, maybe even 4 here I have to splice together. If the sound quits, I apologize. When it shuts down and restarts, there's no sound, so you may miss something. If you do, let me know, and I'll try to clarify it. Can you run a mini fridge off a load? Yes. You have to have the right size or amount of panels. You have to have the right size charging controller and the right size power inverter. What will a single 100 watt panel run? It will run my 12 volt DC pump, which I'm not going to show because it has to be submerged underwater. It will run things to charge like cell phones, USB stuff, even a laptop. If the panel's in direct sun, it should be able to charge a laptop. But will it power a DC to AC inverter off of the load, off a single panel? Absolutely not. Unless you have an inverter that's super weak, then maybe. The weakest one I have is 120 watts. So, if you want to check that out, you're more than welcome to. But anyway, I'm fixing to go. Let's get this in here. That's it. And hope this answers your question to the person that asked, what can I run off of the load on a small charging controller, a single panel. I believe they want to know single panel. Now you can see my batteries, not batteries, but my solar panels are putting out pretty much nothing right now. The sun went behind a cloud. All right, that's it. I'm supposed to go. Everyone have a good day. Sorry about the video being so long. I hope there's not too much shaking because people are really gripe about that. Anyway, everyone have a good one. Bye.